We are back here on Market on Close. I'm Sam Vadas here on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange alongside Marley Kayden in our Chicago headquarters. There's just a few minutes left in today's session, and let's welcome in Kevin Green, Senior Markets Correspondent, to help close out today's session. All right, Kevin, what levels are you watching on the S&P 500? What have you been watching today? Because we did certainly hit all-time highs as we got started this morning, but certainly losing altitude throughout today's session.
Yeah, we did see a little bit of a pullback here today, but the overall trend is obviously to the upside. Kind of going into the close, you want to be able to hold that 6650-ish area to the downside. That has been an area of support. We've been trying to consolidate around that and trying to break a little bit higher. And actually, if you kind of look at the 5-minute chart, we have broken a little bit of a trend back to the upside, which is obviously good going into the close. And you're looking at your next area of resistance at around 66.65. So let's see if that actually does come to fruition here in the next 5 minutes or so. But if you're looking at the internals, we actually did see around 60% of the stocks in the S&P 500 in the green today. It was definitely defensive in nature. You're looking at utilities catching a little bit of a bid, energy kind of in its own little space at this point in time, but up over 2% so far. Consumer staples also doing fairly well after a pretty decent sell-off. So you're not seeing everything sell off in the market at this point. You're seeing a little bit of a cool-off period taking place here, and kind of coincides with the fact that we had equity markets up yesterday and volatility markets up as well. That's something that usually does not happen too often, and usually one of them either breaks. Volatility either crushes, or we do see a little bit of a pullback in the broader market, and right now it looks like we have a little bit of a pullback that's taking place.
So Kevin, with that pullback, and you said one of them usually breaks, what are we seeing in terms of volatility today then?
Yeah, obviously it is inching up higher at this point. We're pretty much at the highs of the month so far, but if we're kind of looking and matching the spread between, let's say, the 3-month VIX and what we are seeing for spot VIX or 30-day vol, there's no backwardation. It's still in a normalized market, if you will. So maybe some near-term concerns, maybe Powell's comments in some ways did suggest maybe some frustration when it comes to the Fed and the data that they are seeing right now. But I think overall, you're just having some profit taking, still some readjustment and alignments actually happening here on the institutional side, positioning for the remainder of the year. And today is a rotational type of trade. You're not seeing everything sell off, and I think that's a good thing. Now, can volatility continue to move higher? It can, but you're probably going to need to have another catalyst in order to do so. And probably that catalyst on the economic data front, it would be on Thursday with initial claims. If we do see that re-rate aggressively higher and exceed the street's expectations, that's where we probably get a little bit of uneasiness in the market. But for now, treat this as just a normal pullback. Still making higher highs, still making higher lows at the moment.
Yeah, as you pointed out, Kevin, I mean, if you look under the hood, it's not all that bad. While we do have certainly leadership pulling back today, what has been working certainly on the back foot throughout the course of the session, we have got some in the green. I mean, energy is really on a tear. I mean, it's up 1.7% as far as that sector is concerned. As you say, perhaps a bit of rotation into a more sort of a defensive trade here. But can you speak to some of the sectors as to some of the outperformance we've actually seen there?
Yeah, from the energy standpoint, if you're looking at crude oil today, you are seeing a bounce. Yesterday, it did cross that $61 threshold, if you will, and that has been an area of support. And so we did see some buyers really stepping in, and there is some concerns around supplies, especially when you're looking at Russia. President Trump also made some comments on Truth Social, kind of giving the green light to basically for the European Union as well as Ukraine to try to recapture some Ukrainian territory and even potentially going into Russia territory. That was actually very interesting here. And then you also had some energy, just specific company news that did take place. Transocean, a very small company when you're looking at the stock price, but that was up around 8%. They're selling off a couple of their rigs. Halliburton, also another very strong day. That was up over 9% at one point in today's session, and that's actually starting to break out as well. If you're kind of looking at the oil and gas players, a lot of them are trying to recapture either 200-day moving averages or really key 20-week moving averages at this point, and so that's a technical signal for buyers to really try to step in. I think that's probably what you're seeing right now when it comes to the energy complex.
Yeah, and Kevin, it's interesting you bring that up. Halliburton, as I'm looking at the top gainers on the day, just overtook Paramount Skydance to be the top S&P 500 gainer. Baker Hughes, the top on the Nasdaq here, as we saw oil go up by more than $1 a barrel today.
All right, we've got a couple of minutes left. There's your bell. this session lower for all four of the major indices today. We did start the day higher, but then pulled back from those records. The S&P 500 closing out the session 0.6% down at 6,656 points. The Nasdaq also lower, 0.7%. That was the underperformer across the board there, as we did see this pullback in technology, some of those Mag 7 names as well, very much on the back foot. The Dow Jones are also 0.2% lower. The Russell 2K doing a similar thing. Interestingly, we had seen the Russell 2K, the small caps, outperforming at one stage in the session. So it was a down day across the board. And looking at the sectors, as we mentioned, when you lift up the lid, it was very much a bit of a mixed picture here. So we did see consumer discretionary also down 1.5%, alongside technology, which was over 1% lower. Communication services also about 0.5% down, as along with financials. But as we mentioned, as Kevin was highlighting there, we did very much see energy higher by 1.7%. We've got those Micron earnings, so I'm just going to get across to Marley to break down some of those numbers that you're seeing as they cross the wires. Marley.
We're just getting the Micron earnings in for their fourth quarter, their fiscal fourth quarter. EPS coming in at $3.03. Estimates were calling for $2.84 there. For their fourth quarter adjusted revenue, they came in at $11.32 billion. Estimates calling for $11.15. So they posted a beat on both the top and the bottom lines. Their gross margin numbers just coming across as well. Margins coming in at 45.7%. Estimates calling for 44.3%. As we start to look at the chart, street response positive here, trading up about 1.5% right now as the numbers continue to come across. Now coming some of their guidance, seeing their first quarter revenue coming in between 12.2 and 12.8 billion. Estimates were calling for it to be under the $12 billion mark, so much higher than the street was expecting. First quarter EPS expectations in terms of guidance, $3.60 to $3.90, considerably higher than the street, looking for $3.05. I want to bring you both back into the conversation here as we start to get more of these numbers. For the gross margins, another metric very closely watched with a company who's been on a tear like this one. Expectations for margins for first quarter, this current quarter, 50.5 to 52.5. Estimates calling for 45.7%. Shares up more than 4.5%. Kevin, I want to come to you first as we take in these numbers. Impressive numbers. Strong quarter from them, arguably a strong quarter. The street seems to like it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree. And actually, it's really on the margin front. So not only are they seeing top side, demand here when it comes to their chips, analysts were actually pretty much on the mark there when it came to the revenue number to the top side there. But the margins are expanding in pretty much every single business unit here. If you're looking at the overall operating margins itself, if you're just looking at gross margins, it's sitting at around 44.7%. This time last year, it was sitting at around 37.7%. Now, there's going to be a little bit of the tough comps. This time last year, we did see the company still kind of writing off a significant amount of inventory here on a relative basis. And so these comps year over year are going to look a little bit distorted, but you are continuing to see some expansion on operating margin as well. That's sitting at a 32.3%. This time last year, we were sitting a lot lower than that. Even if you're looking at fiscal Q3 2025, it was sitting at 23.3%. So they're definitely doing the right things, not only trying to grow those top line sales, but they're starting to really be able to push prices. And that's really that indication there. It's probably not the expense management side of their business. It's probably the fact that they do have a little bit of leverage, especially in the high bandwidth memory space, and then the DRAM space, which has been in a cyclical downturn for the last 2.5 years or so. It seems like the inventory is now kind of flattened out here when it comes to their customers, and their customers are now reordering, and obviously they're going to be a huge factor when it comes to data center. And then last but not least, they have a mobile business as well. Not a lot of people really talk about that, but once again, seeing some gross margins sitting in their mobile business at 36%. This time last year it was at 32%. So every single business segment is doing exactly what they need to do here. Stock has run up pretty aggressively. You're looking for around a 10% move to the upside or downside. That's what the market was pricing in. Let's see if that actually does take place here. It seems like it's trying to at least go up almost $8 right now in after hours trading.
Hours, they're up about 5%. Sam, I want to bring you into this conversation too. As we get more of these numbers, it's been a cash flow story, a margin story. Cash flow numbers just coming across 5.73 billion expected, 4.72. So just impressive beats. Shares moving higher, but is it a guidance story? Is that going to be the same here for Micron?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly the big question. I was speaking to an analyst earlier today who was certainly expecting a beat and a raise here as far as what we're getting. I mean, certainly a beat across the board looks impressive, and the street is very much celebrating that. I think the really big story going into today also was whether this company and what we got from this report card was certainly going to justify the run-up that we've seen, certainly as far as the impressive almost 40% jump we'd seen in September, 175% higher from the April lows as well. It looks like the street likes what it's hearing here as far as the numbers are concerned. But, interesting to hear what they're going to be saying on the call as well. I'm just wondering, as we look across what we're getting as far as the numbers, just Kevin, also bringing you back into the conversation, what do you believe would be important to hear about on the call? Because I know that some people had some questions about CapEx customers and also whether they can sustain the growth moving into 2026 as well.
Well, Micron doesn't appear that it's raising its CapEx guidance moving forward, which is why we are seeing the expansion in not only gross margins, but operating margins. So that's one thing. Two, gross margin expectations for Q1 sitting at 50%. I don't think anybody probably had that on the street. I might be wrong, but we will see when it comes to that business as well. And overall, the conference call is going to be key. Could they have an oracle moment and really try to expand out their guidance? We already know what they printed, but do they actually give us a little bit more insights into the next 2 to 3 years when it comes to the demand for not only high bandwidth memory, but also for the DRAM chips? I think they did that essentially in August. Let's see if that's going to happen again this time around here.
Well, Kevin, thank you for being with us to break down these earnings. One final commentary from Micron management that we think is strong. You can see it there on the bottom of your screen as well. In fiscal 25, we achieved all-time highs across our data center business and are entering fiscal 26 with strong momentum and our most competitive portfolio to date. So, the street asked for an impressive quarter. It appears they got one. The call will happen here shortly at 6 p.m. Eastern, and we'll see how they perform on this news tomorrow. But Kevin Green, thank you for being with us to break down Micron's earnings today, a beat on both the top and the bottom line, and improved guidance and forecasting for them as well.